The key clicked like it had a story of its own, sharp, metallic, and impossible to ignore. I remember the weight of it in my hand, the cold brass biting at my palm, and the soft groan of the hinges as I turned the knob. The apartment felt alive, almost whispering with the tension that had been simmering for years. I stepped in, and everything was the same yet different. The smell of cedar polish, the faint hum of the refrigerator, but my heart knew something had shifted. I set my hand on the counter, steadying myself, and thought about what had happened the night before. The scene at dinner replayed in my mind like a slow-motion film. Silas, perfectly composed, exuding authority as always. But his eyes? The ones that should have held only love, had been knives. And then there was her, Brittany. That smile that was too practiced, the way she leaned in, claiming territory that wasn't hers. It wasn't just humiliation, it was a signal. A line had been crossed. That morning, I found myself performing the rituals of our shared life with mechanical precision. I measured his coffee just so, a heaping scoop of dark roast, a pinch of cinnamon, 2 drops of vanilla. His shirts were ironed carefully. No crease could betray the hidden tension. Sunlight spilled across Central Park, and I pressed the steam button as if I could smooth out not just the wrinkles in his collars, but the frayed edges of my life. Even now, the memory of his good girl still stings like a faint paper cut. The words were small, seemingly harmless, yet each syllable carried 1,000 tiny expectations, a ledger I was always expected to balance. That was our life. Gestures measured, emotions restrained, every interaction a transaction. At 3 p.m., my hairdresser finished styling me into what Silas called approachable elegance, soft waves that didn't move unless the market did. I had my guest list spread across my lap, notes scribbled in the margins, memorizing what mattered to everyone else: who sailed, who hated red meat, who collected teapots. I memorized these details like recipes, but for survival, not culinary delight. My phone lit up with the name I once cherished: Carol. A friend, a morning walk companion. I let it go to voicemail, knowing I didn't have the energy to explain why I always seemed busy at exactly the moments she was free. Even in those small interactions, I had become invisible, a ghost performing a life someone else wrote. By dinner, I was ready, poised, and aware of every detail. The hotel dining room smelled of polished wood and truffle oil, dim lights softening the edges of tired faces. Wives clustered in corners, exchanging laughter that didn't reach their eyes. I took my seat beside Silas, feeling his hand at the small of my back, an anchor, a warning, a claim. And then she appeared. Brittany. The way she moved demanded attention, effortless and rehearsed, as if the world owed her notice. Sliding in between us with casual certainty, she whispered her familiarity, calling him C and CC, private names I had never heard, shared in some secret that had nothing to do with me. I asked questions, attempting civility: where she grew up, how she came to New York, her experience. She answered lightly, with a charm that didn't extend beyond rehearsed etiquette, and then she said something that sent a shiver down my spine. "Do you still get that beautiful eastern light in the master?" Her tone hinted at knowledge she shouldn't have, and intimacy that wasn't hers. I forced a smile, excused it as youth and naivete, but my stomach tightened. Something had changed, and I felt it in the back of my throat, a warning I hadn't yet given voice to. The evening unfolded in careful measures. Silas's subtle touches, her invasive familiarity, the wives' quiet glances. It all blended into a symphony of tension. Each moment was a reminder of my diminished presence, the space I once claimed, now invaded by someone who didn't understand the rules, yet acted as if she owned the boardroom and the penthouse alike. Then came the small gestures, the retied tie, the polite laughs, the unnoticed pinch under the table, each one calculated, controlled, designed to remind me of my place. But instead of submission, I felt a spark, a thought forming, The life I'd performed for 12 years wasn't mine anymore. I realized I'd been conditioned to move silently through my own home, to serve as decoration rather than inhabit the life I built alongside him. By the time dessert arrived, I had made a decision. Her selfies, the caption, winning, the subtle encroachment, they wouldn't define me. Not tonight, not ever again. I asked a quiet question, almost lost in the clinking of cutlery. Do you have a pet name for my husband, or is it just for you? My voice was gentle, controlled, but it cut deeper than a shout. The room shifted subtly, the air thickened, and Silas's smile faltered for the first time that evening. Later in the car, silence fell like a heavy curtain. The city lights flickered past, indifferent, while I processed the day's events. Brittany's scent lingered, a reminder of the intrusion, but also a marker of clarity. For the first time in years, I noticed the spaces I had ceded, the colors I hadn't chosen, the patterns I hadn't questioned. I realized how long I had let others write my story. That night, I packed a thin blanket, a pillow and my phone, entering the guest room, a place I had never stayed willingly. Lavender and furniture polish hung in the air, untouched, pristine, unlike my own life, which had become cluttered with compromises. I lay fully dressed, staring at the ceiling, the city's hum filtering through the window. For the first time in years, I slept without waiting for someone else's rhythm to dictate my own. By sunrise, I sat at my grandmother's desk, a pen in hand, and began to write. At first, small things, my friends, my habits, my choices. Then larger, more deliberate entries, moments of control, acts of compliance, days of quiet endurance. Each word was a brick in the foundation of something I hadn't realized I'd been building, my own freedom. Among old papers, a business card fell into my lap. Margaret Winters, attorney, just in case, the handwriting promised. And in that instant, I knew the path forward was no longer guided by fear, by habit, or by his expectations. I had a map, a key, a plan, a way to reclaim the life that had been slowly taken from me, one small, deliberate step at a time. The morning knock came precisely at 6:30, 3 measured raps. His voice filtered through the door. Juniper, are you awake? I finished applying lipstick, held my mug of coffee like armor, and waited. When the door opened halfway, I met his gaze. One I had seen daily for 12 years, now balanced against a calm I had cultivated over hours of reflection. Have you learned your lesson? He asked. I held his gaze evenly. You'll have to be more specific, I replied, stepping past him toward the elevator. My day of quiet rebellion had begun. The city awaited, indifferent, and I stepped into it, choosing every next move for myself.
Rick nodded, scanning every note, every mark. You thought of everything. Honestly, Juniper, I've never met someone so precise under pressure. He smiled, but it wasn't casual. It was the kind of smile that acknowledged battles fought quietly. I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in years. Control. Real control. We went over every detail again. The penthouse, the elevators, the security cameras, the schedules of the staff. Every routine that Silas had trained into the apartment's rhythm became a roadmap I could use. I realized then that for years I had lived under a kind of invisible choreography I hadn't consented to. Every morning, every cup of coffee, every smile had been practiced, measured, and evaluated. And now, I was learning how to turn all of that to my advantage. Rick leaned back and rubbed his chin. You're not just reclaiming your life, you're rewriting it with precision. You know, most people wait until it's too late. I smiled, a small, self-assured smile that felt unfamiliar. I wasn't going to be most people. He handed me a folder with instructions, timelines, and contingencies. I tucked it carefully into my bag, feeling the weight of possibility. For the first time, I was planning for me, Not for Silas, not for appearances, not for anyone else. As I stepped back into the city streets, the wind carried the faint tang of rain and the sharp scent of ambition. Each step felt deliberate, purposeful. I didn't feel fear. I felt recalibrated, like a piano that had been out of tune for years finally struck the right chord. That evening, I returned to the penthouse under the guise of normalcy. Silas was still at the office, or at least that was what I told myself. I moved through the apartment quietly, opening drawers, checking files, photographing documents, anything that might hint at irregularities. Every piece of paper felt like evidence, a small victory. Then I noticed it, a faint smudge on the ledger I had never paid attention to before. The handwriting wasn't Silas's usual precise script. It was something softer, a little slanted, hurried. My pulse quickened. Could it be? I paused and listened. Silence. Just the hum of the fridge and the faint tick of the clock. I photographed it, marked it, and set it aside. This was the kind of detail that could unravel everything. If Silas thought he had controlled every angle, he hadn't counted on the quiet observation of someone who knew every corner of his life. Later that night, I sat in the guest room reviewing everything I had gathered so far. My phone buzzed, an unknown number. I hesitated, thumb hovering. Finally, curiosity won. "Juniper?" a voice said, low, careful, just familiar enough to make my chest tighten. "It's me, from earlier. Thomas." I blinked. Thomas. The doorman. He wasn't supposed to reach out like this. I tightened my grip on the phone. "There's something else. Something Silas doesn't know you've noticed yet. But I've kept track. You need to see this." I felt a rush of adrenaline, a mix of fear and anticipation. "Show me," I whispered. He sent a photo. My eyes scanned the screen. Receipts, appointments, small transactions, coded, indirect, but clear. Silas's pattern was meticulous. But this was evidence, not just of neglect, but of betrayal. Every business expense that went unchecked, every secret meeting, every little diversion, lined up perfectly. I sat back, trying to steady my breath. The weight of the truth pressed down on me, but it wasn't crushing. It was empowering. Finally, I could see the web he had woven, and more importantly, the scissors I now held. A soft knock at the guest room door pulled me from my thoughts. My heart skipped. Who could it be? I wasn't expecting anyone. "Juniper?" Silas's voice filtered through the crack. Smooth, calm, but with an edge. "I thought I heard you moving around. Everything okay?" I froze. The stakes just got higher. He wasn't supposed to know I had been investigating. My hands were resting lightly on the tea mug. I kept my voice steady. "Just couldn't sleep. Needed tea." The door didn't open. "I see. Well, don't stay up too late," he said and walked away. That's when I realized something critical. Every step I took from now on would be a dance on a tightrope. One misstep and Silas would be watching. But if I moved carefully, if I controlled my timing and my moves, the outcome could change entirely. The next morning, I woke early, dressed deliberately in muted tones that concealed intent. I moved through the penthouse, not as a wife trying to please, but as a strategist, a general preparing for a quiet battle. Every gesture was calculated, every movement rehearsed in my mind like a chess piece. Rick called mid-morning. "Everything on track?" "Yes," I replied, voice calm, but my mind raced with possibilities. "We proceed as planned." He smiled through the phone. "Good. Patience and precision. That's all you need." I hung up and glanced out the window. The city stretched endlessly below, indifferent to my small rebellion, yet strangely reflective of my own emergence. I realized that for 12 years I had lived in a gilded cage, but the key had always been within reach. I had just needed to find it. And then the softest, most dangerous thought crept into my mind. Once I reclaim what is mine, there's no going back. Not to the apartment, not to the life that Silas designed for me, not to the quiet, invisible existence I had accepted. The thought thrilled and terrified me in equal measure. As I prepared for the next phase, gathering documents, planning meetings, and timing interactions with every staff member, I felt a subtle shift in myself. It wasn't anger that fueled me, not entirely. It was clarity, a sharp, quiet certainty. By the time Silas returned that evening, I was ready. Not confrontational, not desperate, but deliberate. I would play the role he expected, smile when required, nod when necessary, but every move was mine. Every action was calculated to give me leverage. Dinner was a performance. Silas arrived, polite and precise, unaware that the balance of power had shifted. The table set perfectly, the lighting flattering. Guests arrived, and I observed every nuance, every flicker of eye contact, every gesture. Brittany was there, of course, always there. But now I had knowledge she did not. I had evidence, allies, and the determination that comes from someone who has nothing left to lose and everything to gain. As she leaned across Silas again, adjusting his tie as if it were a private joke, I watched silently, letting the tension mount. Every smile I gave him, every polite response, was a mask. Inside I was a storm, coiling, ready to strike. The first soft cliffhanger hits here. I felt Silas's gaze linger, longer than necessary, a spark of suspicion in his eyes. He noticed a change in me, a subtle difference in posture, in tone, in confidence. He didn't know yet, but soon he would realize that the quiet, obedient wife he had known for 12 years was gone, and what replaced her could not be ignored. Subscribe for more stories like this.
The next few days were a delicate balancing act. Every interaction with Silas had to be measured, every smile carefully placed. I moved like a shadow through the penthouse, observing, documenting, and planning, while he remained oblivious. He thought I was still the compliant, perfect wife. He couldn't have been more wrong. I met Rick in secret. "Everything you found?" he asked. "All of it. Enough to dismantle him completely if I wanted," I said. My voice was steady, but the thrill beneath it was undeniable. But I don't just want revenge. I want control. I want my life back. Rick nodded. "Then proceed carefully. You already have the advantage. Don't rush it." And I didn't. I watched, I listened, I waited. Every misplaced ledger entry, every secret transaction, every careless word Silas had ever spoken was now a thread I could pull. I wasn't just reclaiming my life. I was rewriting the rules of it. Then the night came when everything shifted. Silas was alone in the living room, reviewing papers. Brittany had left hours ago, leaving a trail of perfume and faux laughter. I walked in with a calm smile. "Juniper, you're late," he said, not looking up. "I've been busy," I replied softly. My eyes didn't waver. He looked up finally, sensing something different. There was a hesitation in his stance, a flicker of uncertainty. "Busy? With what?" I placed a folder on the table. Silas raised an eyebrow, curious. I opened it, letting him glimpse the documents inside. Bank statements, coded receipts, emails. His eyes widened, then narrowed. How did you get these?" he whispered, the smooth veneer of his composure cracking. "I've been watching, Silas. I've been learning. And now, I know everything," I said. My voice was calm, almost gentle, but every word carried authority. He leaned back, trying to mask his panic, but it was useless. I continued. "For 12 years, I followed your rules. I kept the peace. I smiled. I pretended. But you forgot one thing. You underestimated me. And that's where you failed."
Silas's hands trembled slightly as he reached for the papers. "Juniper, this doesn't stop," I said firmly. "You lost the right to speak first. You've spent years controlling everyone around you. But I've been waiting, preparing, and watching, and now I'm done being invisible." The silence in the room was electric, every second stretched, heavy with tension. Silas knew the game had changed, and he had no idea how to regain control. I leaned closer, letting my words sink in. "From this moment on, I decide. You'll follow my terms. Every business move, every personal choice, you'll answer to me. You wanted power? I've taken it from you, piece by piece, with precision." His face paled, the arrogance, the control, the illusion of dominance gone in an instant. For the first time in years, Silas felt powerless. I closed the folder with deliberate finality. "I'm reclaiming my life, Silas, and nothing you do will stop me." He swallowed hard, and I saw it. Fear. The man who had once made me feel small and unseen now trembled at the force of my quiet authority, and I realized that after years of waiting, I had finally become untouchable. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I had taken control of my destiny. That night, I slept for the first time in years without tension or fear. The weight that had pressed down on me for 12 long years was gone. I had reclaimed my life, my voice, and my freedom. As dawn broke, I looked out over the city, the streets bustling below, unaware of the silent victory that had unfolded in a penthouse above. For the first time, I felt truly alive, free, powerful, and unafraid. Because sometimes the strongest battles are fought not with fists, but with patience, precision, and the courage to take what is rightfully yours. The smile that formed on my lips wasn't one of bitterness or anger. It was one of triumph, the quiet, undeniable proof that I had survived, endured, and ultimately